Hello, everyone. This is the eighth class for social psychological perspectives on health. So, in the previous class, we started chapter 5, and then we talked about how people may experience stress differently. And I first talked about the biomedical model. And in this model, people go through the three stages when they encounter the stresses. And well, this biomedical model explains how people may respond to stressors, but it doesn't explain why some people perceive the stress as a threat while others perceive the same stressors as a challenge. And so we turn to the dispositional model, and this model argues that there are different types of people. So basically, people have different personalities, and then what kind of personalities they have actually is related to how they may experience stresses. However, later research studies found that this distinction of type A and type B are not really is not really related, or maybe only weakly related to their the way people perceive stress, and then also the how it is related to health outcomes. So in the dispositional model, we tried to understand what kind of people may experience stress positively, while others may experience the same stress negatively. But it seems that this approach failed. So next, we try to understand in today's lecture what kind of situation may lead people to experience the stress negatively or positively. So in the dispositional model, we try to understand who may experience stress positively. But in this case, in this the situational model, when people may experience stress negatively. So let's look at this, the role of life events. So in the previous lecture, as I said, if not dispositional factors, how about situational factors? So Holmes and Lahey propose social readjustment rating scale. So this scale aimed to quantify the amount of stress of particular life events. And as a baseline, they set the amount of stress of marriage as 50. And then the degree to which they demanded more or less the readjustment relative to marriage was scaled in terms of the degrees of their stress. So this is a part of the social readjustment rating scale table. Sorry, there's a typo here. Not the scale, but the scale. And so as you can see, the number one ranking is death of spouse. You could say 100 stress point. And then the next one is divorce and marital separation, jail time, this for close family member, personal injury or illness, and marriage. So this is set as an anchor. And then from the marriage, how much readjustment a particular life event would require. And one after the marriage is fired at work, and marital reconciliation, retirement, changing health of a family member. So death of close family member was set as 63, and then changing health of a family member was set to 44. So changing health is better than death of close family member. And pregnancy, changing number of argument with spouse. So as you can see, most of the stresses or the life events that put so much stress on people are negative events. But as you kind of go down, there are some positive events as well. So people do not experience stress, not people do not experience stress only from negative events, but also from positive events. So this social readjustment rating scale is basically not about the negative life events, but more like life events that require readjustment. So beginning or end of school, some people may experience it positive and some people may not. Some people experience it as negative. And so basically vacation as well. So most people may experience it as positive, but still it requires some readjustment to their daily lives. So it is listed in this social readjustment scale. Okay. So the more people experience life events in a year or a shorter time period, the more likely they are to report psychological or psychosomatic symptoms of stress. So you may imagine that if you, let's say, get divorced and also you receive the jail time in the same year, you are very likely to receive or you are very likely to develop psychological or psychosomatic symptoms of stress, right? You can maybe easily imagine that. However, this social readjustment rating scale is not free of limitations. So first, as we have seen in the biomedical and dispositional models, there are only weak correlations between life change and psychological and physical disorder. And there are a lot of criticism against this model. Maybe you can refer to the page 89, but some of them are like relationship. Well, the levels of stress people may experience from these life events would be dependent on the relationship they have, the SES they are in, and then also in which culture they may live. So for example, marriage, the anchor of the readjustment scale. If your relationship with the mother, spouse, mother, and father is very good, the levels of stress you may experience could be much lower, you know. And also SES, if you are in the high SE status, and then because of being fired at work, if you expect that your social status will be very unstable or uncertain, you may feel very strong stress, just like we studied in the previous chapter. But even if you are fired, if you can still have some other sources of income, just because you are in the high status, you do not experience much stress from being fired at work. So, and also culture, maybe. Like if you are in a close-knit culture, like in Japan or China, maybe marriage could be somewhat more stressful because you have to coordinate how you may interact with the relatives of your spouse, but more like a loose-knit culture, maybe like France, maybe. So if the marriage is more like just between individuals, not between families, then the amount of stress or the amount of resources that you would be required to coordinate is much lower. Then you would experience much lower stress. So the baseline of the criticism against this model is that, again, people would experience stress differently. And then not on all the life events would not be experienced similarly. Okay, so to overcome the problem, researchers break down factors contributing stress in a particular domain. So in this table, as you can see, there are different there are stresses from different domains, like family issue or like work related issue and more like social issues, you know. So one of the such example is work-related stress. So Cartwright and Cooper proposed 6 distinct sets of factors that contribute to work-related stress. 1, intrinsic job features, so such as working conditions, working time, training, and safety. So how good or bad working condition could be, or how long you have to work, or how much you can have training before you actually start working, and then how much your job position is secured. Or more directly related to physical safety, maybe how much dangerous your working environment maybe. And 2, organizational roles is whether you have to take responsibility or whether what you need to do at work is clear or ambiguous. So these organizational roles may contribute to work-related stress. And work relationships, if you have good relationship with your boss, the amount of stress you would experience at work would be much lower. But if you have a bad relationship with your boss or with your peers, then your work-related stress would be tremendous. Career development, if you have a chance of being promoted, then maybe even if you have a lot of workload, the amount of stress you may experience would be relatively lower. And if you have to move to different department a lot, then you would experience a lot more stress, because what you have learned in the past year or so would not be very useful and helpful for you. And then the amount of workload may be relatively more, so you would experience more stress. And organizational factors, this refers to the cultural the culture of the workplace, or what kind of leadership the bosses at work would take. Whether leadership can be like one boss leads everyone, or one boss push everyone forward, you know. So in the first example, the leader typically shows the works as a role model, and then basically leaders assigns what kind of work employees need to do. For the latter example is more like employees decide what to do, and then leaders sort of confirm what they can do, or maybe give a support to the ideas that employees developed. And the work form interface, so like how much, this is more like, you know, work-life balance, I guess. So whether they have enough time at work and home, or whether the way they work is not in conflict with the living style that they take at home. Okay, but again, there is a criticism. So some people find the job very dull and full of dissatisfaction, while others find the same job very interesting and exciting. So what matters for stress is not so much the objective features of a given situation, but rather a person's subjective experience of it. So this sort of how can I say, improve situational model still doesn't explain the individual differences. Like even if people work at the same workplace, some people may experience a lot much less stress, while others experience a lot more stress. And then if they have same working conditions and if they take same organizational roles, and of course because they work at the same workplace, they are undergoing the same work cultures, but still there are differences. And why is that? And this is because the objective features of a given situation is not so important, but person's subjective experience is important for how they may experience stress at work. And the people who criticize this model also argues that in which groups they belong is important. And this is because groups enhance solidarity among workers and the feeling of security. So even if there are two, let's say there are two groups, and then even if these 6 factors are exactly same in both groups, if workers in their groups differently identify with the groups, then as we are already aware that people experience work and stress differently. This is because to which group they belong determines how they experience their work or their everyday events. Okay. So situational model again doesn't work. So then what other options do we have? The next one is the transactional model, the role of appraisals of threat and support. So this model focused on people's perceptions and cognitions and pointed out that they are fluid and negotiable. So what this means is that basically the way people perceive the situations could vary a lot. And even within the same individual, they could perceive same events differently. They can change how they perceive the same event. So there are studies by Lazarus and colleagues. So they had people watch films of people in traumatic situations, something like accident in an industrial workshop. I think the man in the film lost his arm or leg during work, and then there were 3 conditions. So in the control condition, there was no instruction. Participants were just told to watch the film of people in traumatic situation. And the second condition, denial condition. In this condition, the participants were told that the man in the film was actor. So there was no actual traumatic situation, but this guy is just pretending that he's injured. Okay. And the third condition, intellectual condition. The film was made to teach about workplace safety. So again, in this condition, participants were told that the film is not actual footage of what happened in the industrial workshop, but this is more like the how can I say, educational purpose. So that people could learn what could happen at the workplace and then what they can do to improve workplace safety. And what they observed was that, what the researchers observed was that the latter 2 conditions, denial and intellectual conditions, showed fewer signs of stress. So what these studies tells us, basically in the control condition, participants thought that this was something really happened. So they may emphasize with the man in the film, and then they may experience the pain. But in the denial and the intellectual condition, they know that the man in the film was actor, so they know that the man did not actually harmed, did not get harmed, and did not feel any pain. They just pretend that they are feeling, I mean, the man is feeling pain. So in these two conditions, participants do not empathize with the actor, and thus they do not feel much pain or stress in these conditions. So the experience of stress is structured by a people's cognitive appraisal of a given stressor. In the control condition, they thought that the injury is real, and in the denial and intellectual conditions, the injury was not real. So they perceive the same situations differently, and just because they perceive them differently, they experience different levels of stress. So this is the figure of the transactional model of stress. So potential stressor. So in the previous example, you could say that the potential stressor is a film. And then if people believe that this is actually what happened in really, this is a real accident that happened before. And then people would see that, okay, this could happen to me as well, or maybe they take the situation as more real, and thus they would see it as a threat to themselves. And then there are two stages of appraisals. So in a primary appraisal, people just think whether is this a threat to me or not. And if they think it's a threat, then there is a secondary appraisal. Can I cope with the threat? So in the film, okay, I could lose my hand as well. And then is there any way that I can avoid such accident? And then if the answer to this question is no, then they would experience high stress. But if they can learn what kind of or like how can they avoid such accident? If they could learn how they could avoid such accident, then they can perceive that they can cope with such a threat. Then they would only experience low stress. And then also, if in the primary appraisal they just perceive the situation as not stress, then they would experience only low stress. Okay, so in the situational model, potential stressor determines whether they experience high stress or low stress. But in this transactional model, the same stressor could be perceived differently. Some people perceive the stressor as a threat, and some people perceive the threat as beyond their control. Then they would experience stress, and then, but if not, then they would only experience low stress. The word, the transactional, means that the experience of stress and people's cognitive appraisal is a set. So when people perceive the event as a threat, they would experience a high stress. If person perceive the event as not a threat, then people would perceive low stress. So the levels of stress and the way they appraise the situation is a set. It's a, yeah. Okay. So both appraisals reflect a person's understanding of themselves and their environment. And in secondary appraisal, they also assess their coping resources and options, like denial and avoidance, and likely outcomes. So in the primary appraisal, they simply consider whether the situation is a threat or not. But in the second appraisal, they consider more other more issues. And the denial and avoidance would increase stress in long run. And this is because maybe an example could tell you better. If a person sees a final exam threatening, they may deny that there's an exam, so they just pretend that there is no exam, or they may avoid studying for exam. And this type of coping leads to failing the course, which may be even more stressful. So at the beginning, the presence of exam was a stressor, but just because they denied its presence, or they just avoided to cope with or they avoided preparing for the exam, and they failed the course, which is much more stressful for them. So the coping options is actually more stressful. So even if they perceive that they can cope with the threat, if the way they cope with the stress is denial or avoidance, after they may experience low stress from the presence of exam, but after failing the exam, they would experience much more high stress because failing the course is something that they can no longer cope with. Okay, so I will just stop here and then continue the following in the next video. Thank you.